Hey everybody, welcome back. This is going to be a new type of video. I need a new playlist for this. This is going to be books that I have finished and I want to talk about them. Maybe I don't know enough about them, or I don't have enough material about them to do one of those 5 video series that I've been doing about sort of your classic English class staples. But I finished, and I think that should be marked with something. I think I should get a little gold medal, or at the very least, make a video. So that's what I'm doing. So this will be the first of those. It is a book that I finished on Thursday, and I kind of want to talk about it, share some of my initial thoughts. If I think of something else, I'll record another one. Hey, why not? YouTube is free, I think. So let's get going. The book that I finished on Thursday was Italo Calvino, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. This book is unusual, we'll call it that. It is an unusual book. You should be in, I guess, the right mindset to read this book, right? So if you go into it, I want to tell you right now, if you go into this book, you pick up If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, you need to sort of be prepared that it's going to be different. I haven't read any of Calvino's other books. I do want to, because he is a lovely writer. I like his prose. I like the way that his writing sounds. He clearly has a fantastic imagination, so I definitely want to read some of his other works, but I haven't yet, so I can't really tell you what to prepare in terms of how close this will be to a Calvino book. But just be ready, because it is unusual, because it is a book about books, and it is a book about reading and what it means to be a reader, what it means to be a writer. He gets into a bit about the potentiality, actually, of AI writing, which I thought was fascinating. I was not expecting that, because this was published well before the advent of AI. But one of the first things you need to know is that this book starts off in second person. Now, you may remember, if you watched my video much earlier, the What Are We Reading video, second person is when the narrative addresses you as the reader, and you as the reader are a character in the book. You are performing the action, right? So let me give you the opening lines, right? You are about to begin reading Italo Calvino's new novel, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. Relax. Concentrate. Dispel every other thought. Let the world around you fade. Best to close the door. The TV's always on in the next room. Tell the others right away, no, I don't want to watch TV. Raise your voice. They won't hear you otherwise. I'm reading. I don't want to be disturbed. Maybe they haven't heard you with all that racket. Speak louder. Yell, I'm beginning to read Italo Calvino's new novel. Or if you prefer, don't say anything. Just hope they'll leave you alone. So, yeah, he is maybe not perfectly accurately describing the circumstances under which you are starting, but the first line is true. The first line is probably as true as you're ever going to find in a work of fiction. You are about to read Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. That is absolutely true. And the novel kind of goes on in this regard. There are numbered chapters and named chapters. Numbered chapters are like this. They are about you, the reader, the person reading the book. And in the very beginning, at least, the chapters are plausible, I think is the word I might come up with. The chapters are plausible, right? It talks about sitting in your chair and getting comfortable and finding a nice place to read. And eventually, when things start to go wrong with your reading, as they do, it continues to describe plausible things, right? About going to a bookshop, telling the bookstore owner, hey, you gave me the wrong book. Which is great, but it gets pretty implausible as it goes. These numbered chapters start to get really implausible as you, the reader, get embroiled with this mysterious woman. You find yourself part of a grand conspiracy, dragged off to some strange South American country where you are part of a rebellion, or maybe you're not part of the rebellion, you're part of the establishment, you're really not sure. But either way, you become involved in this great grand thing, which kind of takes away from the power of second person in my mind, in that at the very beginning, like I said, it's plausible, it's reasonable. It is possible that Calvino is reasonably accurately describing a reader's experience. And by the end of it, it is utterly impossible. It is implausible. It is definitely not something that a reader is going to experience reading Italo Calvino's novel. And maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe that's part of what literature does. Literature takes us from the comfortable, plausible life that we lead and leads us to something impossible or unlikely that we're not going to discover in our own lives. And so in that sense, maybe, yeah, all right, Calvino is sort of leading us by the hand from our normal boring prosaic lives where we have to tell the people in the other room to turn down the TV to a strange adventure of espionage and spycraft and the sort of the wickedness of the publishing industry that otherwise we never would have gotten to. And maybe that's, maybe that's what all books do, right? We all settle down the same way we settled down to read this book, in a comfy chair with a book on our hands, trying not to be disturbed. And in the end, we are taken somewhere fantastic and strange that we did not expect to go to. So, I don't know, maybe that's what he's doing. Maybe that's what his plan is. I can't say for sure. Calvino doesn't give a whole lot away. He is definitely trying to, and I think at one point he explicitly says this, he's definitely trying to make us a bit unsettled and a little bit out of sorts throughout the whole book. He doesn't want us to settle in. And the way he does this, at least initially, is this. So like I said, at the beginning of the novel, we are trying to read Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. And the premise of the book is that we will never read Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, because we keep getting the wrong book. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Maybe at one point it was a publishing error. Maybe at one point it was, a book that had been taken away and substituted with another one. It was a book that you've been chasing down and trying to find, because every time you read one of these not Calvino books, you're interested in chasing down that story. And so you end up trying to chase down all of these stories and then ultimately trying to figure out why you can't find If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. So, like I said, all the numbered chapters are about you, the reader, but the named chapters are the beginnings of these other books that you read in the quest to find If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. And when you put them all together, they create this sentence, which is kind of interesting and a little bit weird. But we've got all kinds of stuff. We got spy novels. We've got a strange, weird Japanese story about a guy who ends up kind of falling in love with a mother and daughter. You have kind of a Southwest Mexican exploration of paternity. You've got all of these different stories, which seemingly seem to have very, very little to do with each other. But ultimately, they kind of, each one leads you to a new attempt to find this book, the rest of the book, or the author of this book, or the translator of this book. And so it's all about beginning books. This whole thing is about starting off books. And I can kind of vibe with that. I've started books and put them down. I've never been in a situation where I've bought a book and got the wrong book in the book. But maybe it is a little bit about that search for the right story, the story that really makes you feel like this book is worth reading. Maybe you're looking for the story that really connects with who you are as a person. And maybe that's part of the adventure that Calvino is bringing us on. I think I would like to spend, maybe if I do another video on this in a little more depth, because again, right now this is kind of my reaction video to having finished the book. I would like to do maybe a little more in terms of how each of these named chapters kind of connect to the numbered chapters, how they connect to each other. Maybe there is a pattern that I haven't really seen yet because I wasn't looking for it. And I don't always see patterns I'm not looking for. But I think that would be worth looking at if I have time to give it a reread. And again, if you've read this book and you kind of have maybe a sharper mind on it than I do, hey, sound off, please. I'd love to hear it. But there's a lot going on with this book. I think it is it's worth a read because it is a very strange book. And I'm always a fan of very strange books. I'm also very much a fan of meta literature. I kind of enjoy that. I like books that are talking about books and books that talk about reading. There's a couple other books that fit into this category. There is House of Leaves, of course, which is a very strange book. I read it once. I'm not too eager to read it again because I don't know if I'll survive the journey. And the other one, weirdly enough, is The Princess Bride. If you've seen the movie, you absolutely have to read the book because the book is, in a sense, very much like this. It's a story about stories and why we tell stories and how we tell stories and things like that. So it's very strange that these three very, very different books would fit nicely on a bookshelf together. So those are some of my initial thoughts about Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. And for all that I said, you never get to read If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, the very, very, very last lines of the book are you saying to your partner, to the other reader that you end up falling for, hold on a sec, I'm about to finish reading Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, and book ends. So it is strange, it is weird. I think in the reading group that I was with, it didn't sit well with everybody. Not everybody really seemed to enjoy it. There were some arguments about, for example, this weird hijacking of reader autonomy, I think came up at one point, that Calvino is doing something which writers generally don't do, which is telling us how we should feel and how we should react. And generally speaking, writers, that's not their job, right? We read it, we react the way we want to react. But Calvino is kind of saying, no, you want to read these books, you need to find them. And so he is sort of impinging on the reader's agency in a weird way, because regardless of what he says, we don't have to do or think or feel the way Calvino says we're doing or thinking or feeling. We can, if we want, put the book down. And I think several people in my reading group indeed put the book down, which, hey, you don't finish a book, that is fine. That is fine. Not every book needs to be finished. This is not a competition. However, that said, I finished it. There were some discussions about the female characters. The female characters, how they are described. I wasn't really clocking that quite as well as I could have, but we shall see. There is more to talk about. I do know that. There is more to talk about. So maybe at some point I'll give it a quick reread. I will try to take better notes this time. And again, I'll think about this going forward. If this is a kind of video that I want to do, these sort of, quick reactions after I finished video, which is a terrible title for a playlist. I have to think of something better. Suggestions. Give me suggestions. But I'll make a list of things to do on a reread, and for future books that I'm reading just for fun, I will maybe be a little bit more mindful of the fact that I know I'm going to do one of these videos that maybe needs a bit more meat to it. So, like I said, this is experimental. We're trying things out. We're still in the under 50 phase of this YouTube channel, so we're trying stuff out to see what works. But in the meantime, thank you. Like I said, if you've got thoughts on If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler, if you think that I have done it a gross injustice, please let me know. If you think I have done it way too much justice, please let me know. Either way, I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I will see you next time.